Hello and welcome to the Society's annual members meeting this evening. It's wonderful that more than 300 people have registered to attend this meeting to take part in this new way of meeting and voting. Thank you so much for taking the trouble to join us, and I hope you and your family are keeping safe in these difficult times. We are live streaming from the atrium at Worsted Park. I'm joined by the Society's leadership team, our new Society Secretary, my Vice President Belinda Bolsing, and some of our fellow directors who are presenting reports to you this evening, Bev Perkins, John Hawkins and Frank Moxon. In this new world of extreme social distancing, we are well separated. All our other directors are attending like you, participating remotely in real time. We're also joined remotely by Anup Sudhi of the Society's external auditor, EY. The last few months have presented our co-op with many challenges as we serve our communities in a safe and responsible way. I've been overwhelmed by the support and the compliments we've received from customers and members all over our trading region. It's so heartwarming to see so many praising the hard and difficult times that we're working in and how we're responding to deliver an outstanding service under such difficult circumstances. During this evening, we'll be reporting on our progress, and we'll be sharing a film that Roger and Nick have produced about the challenges we've had to overcome during this difficult time to help us remain open, stocked and safe for everybody, colleagues and our members and customers. As we'll address later in the meeting, the Society's board declared a dividend of £2.1 million in June, and we'll be talking about that as a ratification of the motion to distribute it. As you know, we provided our members with an opportunity to donate all of their dividend earlier this year to our Community Cares Fund. We're delighted and thrilled to say that members donated £139,000 from their dividend, which together with the funding we diverted from our usual activities gave us a fantastic £370,000 to donate. This has enabled us to continue to support vital community services which have helped adapt and deliver services to people living in our region during this very difficult time. We'll end the evening with a film from our Joint Chief Executive, Neil O'Keefe, showcasing some of the groups and charities we've been able to support and highlighting the valuable work they've been delivering during this difficult time. I believe what we stand for and the cooperative values that we share are more important than ever. Now is the time to work together to support our local economy and care for and protect our communities. I'm proud to say that earlier this year we held a charity collection for the NHS staff who were working so hard for us, and we provided their staff with an account in store to show our support for key workers. And this totalled over £400,000, an enormous amount of money in a short period of time. Thank you. Our board feels really blessed to have such wonderful and supportive members, customers and colleagues. Let's keep cooperating. Jonathan Carey, our new Society Secretary, will now take you through a few virtual housekeeping measures, including how to submit questions and how to participate in voting this evening. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sally, and welcome all to our virtual meeting. Obviously a very different way for the Society to be holding its annual members meeting, but we've tried to enable you to participate just as you would if you were here on the day. So what I'd like to do is take you through a couple of housekeeping points, covering questions and how to vote in the motions. So members have been able to ask questions in the run-up to tonight's annual members meeting, but you'll see underneath your event screen a box which enables you to submit questions as we go through tonight's proceedings. These questions will be collated during the evening and we'll address as many as we can in the Q&A section that's coming up later on. For those questions we can't get to tonight, we'll collate themes which will then provide a Q&A on our website shortly after. Please note that if you expand your screen to do a full screen view, you will need to minimize the view to be able to submit a question, depending on the device you're using. That could be hitting the escape key or the back button as appropriate. Throughout the evening, we'll also be asking you to participate in a number of motions. When we do this, you'll see a holding screen will appear, and we'll keep each of those motions open for 60 seconds to enable you to have your say. You'll hear music during those 60 seconds, and whilst the music is running, that indicates to you that the vote is still live, following which we'll come back and we'll announce whether the motion has been carried or otherwise. Full details of all the motions this evening will be provided on the website shortly after. For those of members that are joining us tonight that aren't eligible to vote, you'll still see the holding screen, but you won't be able to see the overlay, and we look forward to you being able to participate more fully in the future meetings. So what I'd like to do just to start is to run a test poll with you. So shortly you'll see a motion appear, and the question that you'll have there is to answer whether your favourite colour is red or otherwise. So please take some time to answer the question, and we'll be back with you shortly. Okay, thank you for taking the time to run the test. Hopefully you saw the overlay well, and I'm pleased to announce that it seems to have worked okay, and it appears that the majority of members' favourite colour isn't red, so there's something that we didn't know before we started this evening. So the final point I'd just like to raise is if you need any assistance using the StreamGo viewing system that you've got in front of you, you can ask questions via their virtual assistant, which should be located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, which I've coined the nickname of Marshall for. So if you're happy to use Marshall and ask him any questions you might have, then one of StreamGo's representatives will be able to help you there. So that's all from me for now. I'd like to now hand you back over to Sally. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'd now like to introduce a video presented by our Joint Chief Executive Officers, Roger Grosvenor and Nick Denny, setting out our society's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to just point out that all the films shown this evening were recorded 2 weeks ago, so won't take into account any of the new guidance just the other day.
We are living in extraordinary times. The last few months have been unprecedented on how the coronavirus has impacted on all our lives. We have seen the best and worst of human behaviour, for those that were panic buying back in March, to those that were supporting people in the community that were vulnerable and needed shielding. We have made a number of changes to how we run our business to ensure that we can keep branches and shops open, ensuring that our colleagues, members and customers stay safe. Myself and Nick will take you through just a few of the challenges that we've faced over the last few months. As well as their colleagues stepping up, so have our local suppliers. They've really been marvellous in maintaining the supply of goods. The top sellers have been bacon, sausage, eggs and mushrooms. The good old English breakfast, not forgetting home baking with flour seeing 500% increase. I must say I've not seen any of the cakes. We are still dealing with some of the challenges brought about by the panic buying we saw back in March, but we're doing all we can to get back to having a full supply of everything. We are constantly reviewing and refining our risk assessments to ensure the safety of our colleagues and customers. Some of the measures we have taken include installing screens to our till points, applying social distancing through the use of signs and floor markings, enhancing cleaning regimes, putting in place temporary restrictions whilst filling our stores also, self-service tills to encourage cashless payments, and introducing Snappy Shopper delivery service. With most people having to stay at home, we saw an expected dip in sales at our forecourts, down nearly 80%. We are beginning to see the trend change as people start to return to the new normal. The human cost of the pandemic has been significant for many families. We really felt for our clients not being able to have a full funeral service they wanted due to social distancing. We know how upsetting this has been, and we introduced live streaming for family members who were not able to attend services. We have been very mindful of the need for bereavement support services at this time, and our funeral colleagues continue to deliver that service with compassion and care over the phone. In the first few months of lockdown, our funeral branches had to close, but I'm pleased to say all of our funeral branches are now open. Our colleagues at Perfix were furloughed during this time, and as all of furloughed colleagues, we topped up their pay to 100%. Many of our colleagues in our travel business were also furloughed, as all non-essential travel was stopped. Colleagues who continued to work from home did a fantastic job helping those stranded abroad at the beginning of the lockdown to get home. They have organised refunds, and 2/3 of our clients have rebooked with us for their holidays in 2021-22, with the rest taking refunds, but with an eye of rebooking with us in the future. I'm pleased to say all our travel branches are now fully open.
Thanks, Roger. Our colleagues across the business have adapted brilliantly, working tirelessly throughout with great care and commitment. We've prepared Worsted Park so it can be used safely when the time is right for a phased return, both for us and our tenants. Colleagues from finance, retail support, IT, HR, health and safety, marketing and property, to us, the Joint Chief Execs, have been working remotely. For many of them, it hasn't been just where they work that has changed. Our health and safety and HR teams have had to implement and carry out occupational health assessments. Our community team have changed how they support and distribute funds to local good causes, and Neil will talk more about this a bit later on. And our colleagues in HR have had to put in place systems and support for colleagues shielding at home and being furloughed. Some of our office-based colleagues also took on completely different roles by joining our teams in stores, helping them to keep the shelves stacked and to take in deliveries. We've worked with our tenants both here at Worsted Park and elsewhere throughout the region to assist them to remain trading through this challenging period by endeavouring to tailor agreements to meet their individual circumstances. We're under no illusion how difficult these last few months have been for many of them, and as a co-op we're committed to dealing with our tenants fairly, objectively and considerately. Our residential portfolio has been relatively unaffected to date, but for the handful of those who have been affected, we've worked to find agreements to keep the tenants in their homes. We continue to support the local economy by using locally based contractors and supply chains to create decent family homes to rent in our region. 5 family homes were completed in July in New Street, Woodbridge, and I'm pleased to say are now all fully let. Work has also started on 3 new family homes in Rushmere St Andrew, just outside Ipswich. We're expecting these to be completed in early 2021. Following a period of furlough, members of our events team are now back at work supporting us with today's virtual annual members meeting, making the most of the outside space we have here at Worsted Park by organising a variety of events including opera in the park, a farmers market and family fun days. However, with the tightening of the COVID restrictions imposed by the government, it's going to become more and more challenging to operate such events in a safe manner.
Cheers, Nick. I hope that's given you some insight on how we've adapted over the last few months to cope with the coronavirus. We are constantly monitoring how we run our business to ensure that we keep our customers and colleagues safe, and we will continue to make the necessary changes. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our suppliers, partners, tenants, colleagues, customers and members for their continuing support.
Thank you, Roger and Nick, for that very informative video. There's been a huge amount of work undertaken. That's just a small slice of it during these very challenging times to protect all aspects, the colleagues, the customers, the members, and the various different groups there. Now over to Jonathan for the results of this year's directory elections.
Thank you, Sally. As members will be aware, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the board made the decision in early 2020 to postpone this year's election. Candidates who had submitted nominations during February and March were invited to continue to participate in the election, which was held during October and concluded at noon yesterday. We're delighted that there's been a well-contested election, and I'd just like to pass my personal thanks to all candidates that submitted their nominations. We ended with 9 candidates coming forward to fill 4 vacancies. As per last year, the Society appointed Civica to undertake the ballot and act as scrutineer. Voting has taken place by post and online during the month of October, and as mentioned, ended at 12 p.m. yesterday. I'd just like to say we had a fantastic response with the highest level of participation we've seen in an election of directors. Nearly 5,000 of our members took the time to have their say and vote either online or by post. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. Full details of the voting will be published on our website and posted in stores during the next week, but I'd now like to announce the result. So you'll see the full details of the results there, and I'd like to congratulate both Nicola and John, Nicola Fox and John Hawkins, on being re-elected for terms of 3 and 4 years respectively. I would also like to welcome Jane Knight and Caroline Lay to the board, who have been elected for the first time for terms of 4 years. I'd like to also take this opportunity on behalf of the board, the executive team, colleagues and all of our members to Chris Matthews and Steve Shaw for all the hard work and dedication that they've given to the board during their time of service over the last 4 and 5 years respectively. So once again, thanks to all of the candidates, and I'd also like to say welcome again to Jane and Caroline. So we look forward to working with you over the coming years. So, okay, back over to Sally.
Thanks, Jonathan. We've now got 2 sets of minutes to approve, and so I'd like you to get ready to vote. The minutes were available online prior to the meeting and can also be accessed if you're using the full screen. The first set are the minutes of the 2019 annual members meeting, and the second set were the minutes that the special general meeting immediately followed the annual members meeting. So over to Jonathan to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Sally. So, as Sally mentioned, the first vote we have this evening is the approval of the minutes of the 2019 annual members meeting held on the 18th of May 2019. You will shortly see the poll screen as per the test, which will open for 6 seconds. So please take your time to choose your selected option, for, against or abstain, and we'll come back to you shortly with the result. Thank you for voting. We're just waiting for the result to come through. There will be a slight delay between the vote being cast, and I'm reliably informed that they have been approved, so thank you very much for voting on those. Now takes us on to the minutes of the special general meeting, which was held again on the 18th of May 2019. As per the first vote, you'll shortly see the poll appear on your screen, so please select your chosen option, and we'll come back to you very shortly with the result. Okay, thank you very much for taking part in that vote. Again, we're just waiting, and they have been approved. So that's the minutes of the SGM of the 18th of May 2019. So thank you very much for taking part, and I'll hand you back over to Sally. Sally.
Thanks, Jonathan. It's now time to ask our Joint Chief Executive, Doug Field, to provide an overview of the Society's performance for the year running up to the 25th of January 2020, along with an update on performance during the first half of this financial year. Over to you, Doug.
Good evening. Great to see so many of you here virtually. And the great thing about doing this virtually is that you can ask questions as I go through this and as things trigger in your mind. So feel free to do just that. So what's my role in this evening's proceedings? I'm here to show you that our finances put us in a strong position to weather the storm caused by coronavirus. And I'm going to do that in two parts. I'm going to tell you about the financial year ending in January 2020, giving you the information you need to approve our annual report. And then I'm going to give you a more up-to-date picture of our finances since January. So first, what's the story of our 2019-20 financial year that's contained in our annual report? Despite sales and profits falling, I'm going to show you that we are in a good, strong financial position to weather the storm caused by coronavirus. You can see here that turnover fell £5 million year on year as we exited our pharmacy and optical businesses and moved our distribution operation into the wider Co-op network. But really pleasingly, that our sales from our ongoing businesses grew by £6 million to over £335 million. We were delighted to see a £5 million increase in food sales, with over £1 million of locally sourced produce sold in just one fortnight. Rental income from our investment property portfolio now exceeds over £8 million, and the properties are worth over £118 million. Our security business, Co-op Secure Response, has continued to see growth, with sales now in excess of £1.5 million. We did see sales fall in our funeral services, with 120 fewer funerals conducted, but we broadly maintained our market share. Investment in our stonemasonry business helped achieve sales growth of over 15%, while our travel and events business retained a steady performance. Trading profits did fall by 19% because of the rising cost of doing business. But we're pleased to have generated trading profits of £4.5 million in what was a challenging market, and I'm going to explain some more later. Our profit before distributions and tax did fall from £5.2 million last year due to several one-off items. Investment from our prepaid funeral bonds fell by £4 million. Some of our properties in our investment property portfolio fell in value because of the general market conditions and some of the challenges faced by the high street. But we did generate a profit of £1.6 million on disposal of our pharmacy, optical and distribution operations. We have a strong balance sheet with members' funds in excess of £200 million, and whilst it did fall mostly down to an increase in pension deficit, we continue to have a strong and robust balance sheet. So to summarise, sales from our ongoing businesses grew, we generated a healthy level of profit, and we continue to have a robust, strong balance sheet, which has stood our finances in good stead to confront the challenges posed by the coronavirus. So why did our underlying trading profits fall by nearly 20%? Well, last year, underlying trading profits was £5.6 million in 2019. That increase in sales from ongoing businesses grew our profits by £2 million. The rising cost of the national living wage cost us £2 million. We controlled our overheads less than 2%. But we also generated losses in relation to our pharmacy, optical and distribution operations, which we exited. Overall, we ended up with £4.5 million of trading profit, a healthy level of profitability given the challenging market conditions. But what about our balance sheet? You can see we've maintained a healthy level of balance sheet, healthy level of net assets and members' fund, all in excess of £200 million for the last 4 years. So what about 2020? Well, we have over £240 million of property, plant and equipment, That's the properties we trade of and the equipment we need to run our business. We've also got over nearly 63 million of funeral bonds, prepaid funeral plans, and the way they're accounted for means the net impact on our balance sheet is in excess of £15 million. But the bad news is that we've got a pension deficit of over £40 million. And that increased £11 million due to a number of factors: changes to mortality assumptions, falling corporate bond yields, and changes to inflation expectations. Our pension scheme deficit is volatile and is subject to changes in market conditions, but it's no cause for concern. We have pledged properties as security, and it covers the liability without negatively impacting our ability to trade. Overall, with assets and members' funds in excess of 200 million, we've got a strong balance sheet, and as I'll show you later, this helps us weather the storm caused by coronavirus. So you've seen we're a profitable business with a strong balance sheet, so what about our cash? Well, at the end of our last financial year, we had £7.2 million in the bank, and we borrowed £2.6 million to fund investment properties in Colchester and Woodbridge. Proceeds from the sale of our pharmacy business and the fixed-term withdrawable shares we issued, offered to members, generated cash in excess of £3.7 million. Over the past 5 years, we've invested over £76 million in our business, introducing new technologies and refurbishing our stores and branches. We've continued to invest in the long-term success of our business, with £4.3 million spent on food store refurbishments and over nearly £3 million on technology. So we're in a good position. With cash in the bank and a strong balance sheet and a healthy level of profitability, we are in a strong financial position to deal with the coronavirus challenges. So how have we fared since the end of January? It's probably safe to say that our nation is experiencing a year like no other, and things will never be the same again. We've been tested in ways we could never have imagined. As an organisation providing essential services, we've stepped up to meet the extraordinary challenges during the first half of this year, and we'll continue to do everything needed to support and improve the daily lives of our members, colleagues and customers through the pandemic. Like many others, we've been learning to do things differently this year, like this AMM. You've already heard from Roger and Nick on how our food and property businesses have responded to the challenge, but what's it meant for our finances? Now, what you're about to see wouldn't have been possible without an unbelievable amount of hard work and dedication from our incredible colleagues. They have worked tirelessly throughout, and I've been continually moved by their spirit, adaptability, and tireless commitment to you, our members and customers. As a food retailer, we've played our part in keeping the nation fed through lockdown. This graph's going to explain how the sales moved against the corresponding period this time last year. So that line in the middle is the sales we generated last year. Food has seen double-digit growth in the period since January. But we have seen a big change in shopping behaviour, as I'm about to show you. As the country entered lockdown, you can see the number of visits to our stores fell dramatically and have yet to return to the levels we saw last year. But whilst the number of visits fell, the spend per visit grew, as you can see here. So for the food business, we're beginning to see more normal sales volumes return, although who knows what will happen next. Unsurprisingly, the travel business has been adversely affected by COVID-19, with sales down 100% on last year. You've already heard from Roger about the fantastic job our colleagues did in helping us stranded abroad at the beginning of lockdown and the level of rebookings. Our forecourts, our petrol filling stations, have also seen a 30% drop in sales, a combination of both reduced volumes and lower prices. Other represents our property, secure response and events business. It also includes our funeral services business. And as a funeral provider, we supported many families in circumstances which made their grief far harder to bear. But overall, we have seen an uplift in sales, but it's a very mixed picture for our family of businesses. But it really does show the strength we have through our diverse family of businesses. So COVID's impacted our sales. What about our profits? Our colleagues have worked tirelessly to deliver high operational standards in a challenging and volatile environment. They've adapted to the constantly changing situation brilliantly, and this is the result. Trading profits of nearly £6 million. The profits from our food and property businesses have supported our other businesses, as have our support service colleagues. As you can see, we're also incurring costs in relation to COVID, which I'll explain next. The diversity of our family of businesses has been a real strength in these times of uncertainty. So what does that 1.9 million of costs related to COVID cover? Well, colleague, member and customer safety and wellbeing is and always will be our top priority. We've invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds into measures to keep both our colleagues and customers safe. This includes the installation of screens at till points and providing gloves, hand sanitizer and face coverings for all our colleagues. We've also guaranteed pay for sick, self-isolating and other affected colleagues. We've paid out a colleague thank you and doubled the discount available. We've also provided support to the NHS employees by providing a discount for them for several months. For our members and customers, you've heard what we've done to address the challenges caused by COVID from Roger and Nick. We've worked tirelessly to make our stores and services safe and welcoming. We continue to follow Government and World Health Organization guidelines to minimise risk, and we're issuing regular communications to both our customers and colleagues, reminding them of government guidance and the measures we have in place. And our communities, we've helped those who needed help the most. And I'm not going to spoil what you're going to hear from Neil later. Your generosity has been put really good use. We should also recognise we've received support from government through rates relief and retail grants, and that's helped us pay for some of these costs that we've incurred. So what does this mean for our cash position? So the cash over the last 3 years, we've had cash in the bank. And the cash at a half-year end in August stood at £13.5 million. That, along with our strong balance sheet, shows that we have a strong position to weather the challenges by coronavirus. We have access to funding if we need it. We're continuing to invest in our future, despite not being able to progress as quickly as we'd like with our food store refurbishments. We spent £4.4 million with £1 million on technology and nearly £2 million on investment property developments in the current financial year. So hopefully you're reassured that financially we're in a very strong position to weather the challenges caused by coronavirus, whatever we face next. So what does the future hold? It's clearly impossible to predict the full nature, extent and duration of the financial impact of COVID-19 over the remainder of the year. And we have the possibility of a no-deal Brexit to factor in. It's likely to be a very different second half of the year. There are clearly a wide range of potential economic outlooks, a likelihood of rising unemployment and a long-term impact on young people starting out. It's also likely that our business will continue to be disrupted beyond the end of the pandemic with changes in food shopping behaviour. But we've taken all that into account and we've looked at our finances and we've planned for the future, and we're in a really strong position to weather the challenges caused by coronavirus. None of what you've seen would have been possible without the truly phenomenal effects of our colleagues. But hopefully you're really reassured that we're in a strong position to continue to improve the daily lives of our members, customers and colleagues for the next 6 months and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, for that very interesting overview. I'd now like to welcome the Chair of our Audit and Risk Committee, Frank Moxon, who will provide the committee's report and introduce the Society's external auditor, EY. Over to you, Frank.
Fellow cooperators, as Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, I would like to provide an update on its 2019 review of both the external and internal audit functions. You can find details of the committee's work during the year on pages 37 and 38 of the annual report. Members present at last year's annual meeting will recall that the board did not propose a resolution to appoint or reappoint the Society's external auditor. This was because it intended, with the assistance of the Audit and Risk Committee, to undertake a timely review of services provided to the Society. This review was completed in mid-2019 and included a competitive tender process that resulted in a change of both internal and external auditors. PwC was appointed as the Society's new internal auditor, taking over from KPMG. EY was appointed as the Society's new external auditor in place of PwC. The appointment of EY was approved by the Board, subject to ratification by members at this general meeting. The Board would like to thank both the previous internal auditor, KPMG, and previous external auditor, PwC, for their services to the Society during their respective tenures. This year's annual members' meeting takes place much later in the year than usual due to COVID-19 restrictions, and EY has already completed its audit of the Society's financial statements for the year ended 25th of January 2020. I will shortly pass you over to Anoop Sodhi, the audit partner at EY, who will present the auditor's report. Later this evening, you will be asked to vote on 2 resolutions. First, to retrospectively ratify the appointment of EY as external auditors for the year ended 25th of January 2020. And secondly, to approve its reappointment to undertake the Society's next audit for the year ending in January 2021. I will now ask Anoop Sodhi of EY to present the auditor's report.
Thanks, Frank. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So Ernst & Young LLP's report on the group annual accounts, which is dated the 20th of May 2020, is set out on pages 49 to 51 of the annual report. Our report contains a description of those assessed risks of material misstatement we identified which had the greatest effect on the audit, an explanation of how we applied materiality in our audit, and an overview to the scope of our audit, including how we responded to the risk of material misstatement we identified. Our report sets out our responsibilities as independent auditor, which are established in the United Kingdom by statute, the Financial Reporting Council, and by our profession's ethical guidance. Our report includes confirmation that we conducted our audit in accordance with the international standards of auditing in the UK and Ireland. An audit involves obtaining evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements sufficient to give reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether caused by fraud or error. This includes an assessment of whether the accounting policies are appropriate to the group's circumstances and have been applied consistently and adequately disclosed, the reasonableness of significant accounting estimates made by the directors, and the overall presentation of the financial statements. In addition, we read all the financial and non-financial information in the annual report to identify material inconsistencies with the audited financial statements and to identify any information that is apparently materially incorrect based on or materially inconsistent with the knowledge acquired by us in the course of performing the audit. If we become aware of any apparent material misstatements or inconsistencies, we consider the implications for our report. Our report concludes that, in our opinion, it gives a true and fair view of the state of the Society's affairs as at the 25th of January 2020 and of the Society's loss for the 52-week period then ended. Has been properly prepared in accordance with the United Kingdom generally accepted accounting practice, and the financial statements have been prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Cooperative and Community Benefit Societies Act 2014. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank and Anoop. I'd now like to hand you over to the Chair of the Remuneration and Search Committee, John Hawkins, who will present the remuneration report. Over to you, John.
Good evening, members. Firstly, perhaps you will allow me to thank you for re-electing me to serve as a director for a final term of 4 years. Thank you very much. The Remuneration and Search Committee's report is set out on pages 536 of the annual report. I do not propose to read this out to you because our time is limited, but I will touch on a few key areas of work that the committee carried out during the year. The first relates to the completion of the executive appraisal process. This was carried out with the assistance of our external auditors, MAD HR, in conjunction with the executive team. And by the executive team, I mean the Society's joint chief executives and the secretary. This process helps us to ensure that the top leadership of the Society is of the highest calibre and is equipped to deliver the business objectives and the cooperative goals set by the board. Notwithstanding the logistical problems posed by COVID-19, the reviews have been carried out and very good progress has been made. Now, in addition to this review and the objective setting process, the committee is currently conducting its annual review of executive remuneration, which this year includes a triennial benchmarking exercise in conjunction with our external advisors, FIT Remuneration. It is anticipated that this will be completed before the end of the calendar year. Also, following the retirement of Mike Faulkner as the Society's Secretary, the committee took the lead role in helping the board to find a successor. And in doing so, we updated the role profile and person specification. The committee initiated the recruitment process and passed to an appointments committee the task of conducting interviews and making a recommendation to the board. Replacing Mike was no easy task, but as you will now be aware, this process resulted in Jonathan being appointed, and we are delighted that he has stepped up from his former position as deputy. Now to our recommendations, and there are 3 of these. The first relates to the setting of the fees for directors. Although we have not formally established this as a formula to follow every year, we are proposing to you the same basis for reviewing the fees as used last year, namely the change in average weekly earnings as published by the Office of National Statistics. This produces a figure of 2.4%, which results in an increase of £211 per annum. And due to the timing of this AMM, any increase will be backdated to cover service from May 2020. The second recommendation again relates to directors' fees, and this is to introduce some remuneration for activities undertaken in addition to the core role of directors. And I will be handing over to the Vice Chair of the committee, Beverley Perkins, in a few minutes to explain this motion. And finally, to the remuneration report itself. I've drawn your attention to some of the main items on which the committee has focused this past year, and other items are set out in the report. The table of executive remuneration is set out on page 38. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow committee members, the executive team, and the many other colleagues across the Society for their contributions to the work of the committee throughout a particularly busy year. And I would respectfully invite you to support both our recommendations and our report. And I will now hand over to the Vice Chair of the committee, Beverley Perkins. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, and good evening to our members. As John mentioned, the board and committee reports are set out in full in the annual report, and these reflect what a busy year it has been for us. Your board consists of members with very varied life and work experience, and we would hope that they are all able to contribute on behalf of members and to East of England Co-op, whatever challenges we may face. To date, no supplements have been paid for additional hours, nor any compensation for loss of earnings. We've realised this may result in some directors not being able to commit additional time and make a valuable contribution on exceptional items. The board have therefore agreed to recommend to members that we introduce a mechanism and budget whereby additional hours can be compensated. If approved, the Remuneration and Search Committee will consider how this scheme would operate for the board's review and approval. The total scheme would be capped at no more than £12,000 for the financial year ending January 2021, and full details would be included in the financial report and statements. We now ask that you support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Bev, for those reports, and we'll come back to members later in the meeting to vote on the matters that have been discussed in those reports. We're now going to move to our question and answer session. We're all quaking in our shoes here, hoping the technology will work properly. I hope you've had the chance to raise any questions, either by sending them in prior to the meeting or via the questions function on the screen, and I can see some questions have come in during those presentations. We'll aim to answer as many questions as possible, but if time does not permit us to do so, we'll collate the themes and provide the Q&A report on our website following this meeting. So I'm going to pass to Jonathan, who's going to facilitate the question answering and posing of those questions. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sally. So the technology appears to be working. We can see the questions have been coming in this evening. We also have some questions that were posed before the AMM tonight. And the first question we've got is from a member, George, which is for Doug, and that relates to, George is asking Doug, what experience does EY have in auditing other cooperative societies?
Thank you, Jonathan. So that's a very good question, George. And as part of the tender process, we very much looked at this because there are a number of anomalies that we have as a cooperative society. And EY audit a number of cooperative societies, and also we checked whether they could cope with things such as funeral bonds, some of the anomalies we have in terms of our share structure, our membership base, and yes, they had good experience, and that was very much part of the tender process. But it's a very good question. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Doug. Just moving on, another question that's coming from George, which this time's for yourself. George is asking, Neil, what, if any, engagement with members or non-members has been undertaken during the Society's last financial year? And what success has it had in order to ensure that people know the value of their membership? So, thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. During the last financial year, before we were impacted by the arrival of COVID-19, we had a number of ways of directly engaging with our members, including invite-only events for our members, such as Christmas tastings, monthly email updates and a magazine. And in the financial year 2019 to 2020, we attended more than 100 community events. We also actively re-engage with lapsed members with a programme of communications and incentives on an ongoing basis. At the start of the pandemic, we introduced weekly emails to keep our members and customers updated. We're reviewing the frequency and content of these, and we intend to continue with regular email communications with our members and customers moving forward. Prior to the pandemic, we had booked a number of venues, Norfolk and Suffolk, for member events that would have been attended by both the leadership team and representatives of our board of directors. We'll reinstate these member events dependent upon future government guidance. We've recently introduced a new membership management system which enables us to get greater member insight and to begin to produce much more tailored programmes for individual members dependent upon their shopper behaviour. And finally, we've got several partnerships lined up and ready to go for our members, but have been hampered by the current pandemic. We will communicate these to our members when the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer, Neil. Another question that's coming from George. George has been very, very busy on the questions today, which is for my colleague Roger. Roger, George is wondering, how is the Society tackling the recent negative television programme which was aired regarding the cooperative funeral, when in fact it's more than likely what is termed cooperative group as being highlighted. So how have we been addressing that challenges, Roger?
George, we were well prepared for this ITV programme, and we were also monitoring what was going on social media. I can say for us it was a non-event. We weren't concerned. The focus mainly was on the Competition Markets Authority and their report that they were about to release or are about to release. And the situation for us where we were involved with the CMA and made recommendations to their report, and hopefully they will be picked upon. We really need regulation in the funeral industry, and therefore we welcomed the CMA report, and this was brought out in this ITV programme. They did mention cooperative group, which is funeral care, but they took the opportunity to say it was not associated with the independent co-ops. For us, we, as a cooperative in the East of England, make sure that those using our funeral services understand what the costs are, what the services are we provide, and the third-party costs that they have to bear as well. So for us, we were well placed, but we were concerned for our customers and clients that use our funeral business, so we placed notices on our funeral homes clearly indicating that we're not part of funeral care. So we weren't concerned by this ITV programme. The problem is when co-op gets mentioned, that's all that's focused on. Co-op, not the East of England Cooperative or whoever they're talking about. So I hope it gives you comfort, George, that we were well prepared for this event.
Thank you for that, Roger. That was a really helpful response. Moving on to the next question from Julia, and this is one for Nick. Nick, Julia would like to just understand the Society's policy on recyclable packaging, and just to understand why some goods such as dried fruit and cereals have recently sold non-recyclable packaging. Over to you, Nick.
Yes, thanks, Julia. It's a very, very topical question. I think what you've experienced is there's been a lack of availability of materials that would normally be used, that can normally be recycled, and that's purely down to the pandemic and being able to source the appropriate materials. So whilst it's not ideal, it certainly is not a long-term change, but it was necessary to maintain the product availability. Now, just talking about the broader question of recyclable packaging, which I think is important and which is a very commonly raised subject, you may be aware that us and the other independent societies within the UK are supplied by Co-op Group as our wholesaler, and Co-op Group are working really closely with their suppliers. We use the product as well, it's on our shelves, about how they use the right amount of packaging on the Co-op branded products. And they've committed that by 2023, 100% packaging will be easy to recycle. So I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And for us, our locally sourced products, which come from our local suppliers, we've set out guidelines as to what we expect from them. And in a nutshell, we expect them to use packaging that is recyclable and is clearly marked on the label as such.
Thank you for that, Nick. Next, we've got a question from Sharon, and this is really taken in two parts, as we've taken, I imagine, Roger and Nick. And Sharon just would like to understand, in regard to the Co-op store at the Triangle Shopping Centre, which is in Frinton-on-Sea, has there been a decision made as to what will replace M&Co, that this is now closed at the store? And if not, have we considered incorporating a post office within the store like there is within the Co-op store in Connaught Avenue?
As part of that, Jonathan, if that's okay. I'll speak and hopefully the camera will follow me. One of the questions was, part of the question was about the post office at Frinton Triangle. The post office is currently in the McColl store and is operated by them. They will be vacating the premises shortly, and I've personally been in contact with the local councillor regarding the post office. We know the councillor are trying to find relocation options for the post office, and possibly there may be a change of ownership as well. Now, I can assure you we do understand the value of the post office to the people living around Frinton Triangle, and we will support the council as they look to secure the future of this branch. I can also say that offers of assistance are on the table for the town council to currently consider. Just talking about post offices, I just wonder, Roger, I mean, you're the executive with responsibility for post offices. I don't know if there's anything further you'd like to add on that.
Yeah, I'd be pleased to do so. We operate 29 post offices across our estate. Unfortunately, they make a negative contribution to the society's profitability. What we have been doing, and we started at the beginning of this year, we wanted to make sure that our post offices were fit for the future and had the opportunities to stay within our business, because obviously having negative contribution to the business, they're a drag on our performance. But we realise they're a service and we want to maintain that service. So what we looked at is how we could improve that situation for ourselves. Unfortunately, the Post Office Limited have not yet come up with a solution to make post offices profitable in entirety. So what we've done, we've looked at our business and we've matched the operating hours to the customer demand. In fact, we've doubled the operating hours to the customer demand, but in doing so, we've reduced them. And therefore, we're operating on less hours, but hopefully still fulfilling customers' expectations to be able to use a post office. But we must make sure that they are fit for the future. And the only way we could do that was by bringing down the hours that we operate to make them potentially more profitable. Therefore, we are not at this time adding any more post offices to our portfolio. They will stay at 29 until we have ensured that the work that we've done on reducing the hours is the right way to go and makes them at least break even. So at this time, we are not taking any more post offices on.
Part of the other part of the question that Sharon asked us was, is M&Co are due to leave their concession space in the store at Frinton Triangle, and was just asking what was going to replace it. I do know that Roger's in advanced discussions, and he's got an agreement in principle with another non-food retailer.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick and Roger, for that response. We've now got a question from Peter, which I'll hand you over to the Chair of our Remuneration and Search Committee, John Hawkins, to answer. And John, Peter's question is just wondering, is benchmarking across industry for directors' remuneration, especially when using professional benchmarking services, merely just a one-way ticket to increase directors' compensation? We're using such professionals is just an accelerator to get higher faster.
Well, thank you for your question, Peter. We have not used benchmarking for directors' remuneration. I think you're probably referring to executive pay. Now, using benchmarking for executive pay helps the board ensure that its salaries are appropriate and realistic in in the marketplace. The board uses consultants because it needs the market data to help it to have meaningful and realistic discussions, both within itself and with the executive team. But I can assure you that the issue of affordability is one of the many considerations the board takes into account when addressing this most important and sensitive issue. So thank you for your question.
Thank you for that response, John. So the next question we have is for Doug. And Doug, this question is from Peter. Peter would just like to understand what the current situation of the pension fund is. Obviously, you've covered some of this already in your previous presentation, Doug, but if there's anything in addition you can provide for Peter, it'd be great.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yes, Peter, I did mention in my finance update about the pension deficit on the year end, and subsequent end, the pension deficit has increased by around 7 million at the half-year stage, decrease in corporate bond yields and inflation assumptions. You're very familiar with the trustee group, and the pension trustees have had extra meetings in the period to monitor the funding provision, consider the investment strategy, and we're very fortunate that we did change the investment strategy towards the end of 2019, which has protected us from the worst of impacts of the change in market conditions. At the last actuarial valuation, the pension scheme was over 90% funded, but we do have triennial valuation on the 31st of January 2021, and we'll see what that will bring.
Thank you, Doug, and hopefully that's answered your question there, Peter. And final question we've got tonight is from Suzanne, and another question for yourself, Doug. Suzanne's just made a comment here. Throughout the pandemic, the staff at our local co-op have consistently provided a cheerful and constant service to all their customers. Now, I'm sure none of them expected to be on the front line in such a way, and Suzanne would just like to know if there were any arrangements in place to pay them a bonus for their fearless and untiring efforts.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's great feedback to hear how well our colleagues have been doing in store, and you're absolutely right. They've been really at the front end of all these challenges. And back in April, we did pay a thank you payment equivalent to a week's salary, and we're considering to keep that under review and whether we can afford anything else in the future at the end as we continue to progress through the challenges co-op. But yeah, fantastic feedback and really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Doug. And I had just said that was the last question, but as I said, that one has come in. This question for Roger. Nick has put forward a question about the funeral business. He's saying, all in all, a good result for the society, but why do we think the funeral business has fallen back? The region is growing, so surely is there something in the market? So if you can help with that, Roger.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult time for the funeral business. Despite the coronavirus, the market actually has shrunk back by about 4 to 6%. And we're very lucky that where we are in the east of England, there has been so few COVID deaths compared to the rest of the UK, except potentially for Cornwall. The volumes this year are just ahead of last year, but the profitability has suffered because we haven't been able to offer the full service to all our customers. Obviously, there's been restrictions, and the situation we find ourselves in, that it was difficult for us and difficult for our clients that they couldn't have the number of people they wanted to attend a funeral, to say goodbye, either at the graveside or at cremations. And that eased after lockdown, and we've had a few months now where we've been able to give the service that we're renowned for, but unfortunately now we're slipping back to where we were previously, and we've made the funeral service as best we can through going virtual, but this has sort of inhibited what we can do. What we're looking to do at the end of this year is provide a virtual celebration of life for all those that have passed this year, and we'll give further details on that later, potentially this month.
Thank you for that, Roger. So we've covered all the questions that we've received this evening, so thanks all for taking part in that. And I'd now like to move back to Sally, who will go through the motions. Thank you, Sally.
Okay, thank you very much for all those questions. Very interesting topics. We now come to the board motions, and I can confirm that we haven't received any member motions this year. So all the motions are being recommended by the board for you to vote on, and we hope you will support them. The first motion is to receive the report and the accounts. We're going to open the poll now, and on the screen you'll see options for, against and abstain, and you need to select an option and we'll announce the result afterwards. Please remember it will only open for 60 seconds. You need to cast your vote in that period. And members who are not eligible to vote will not see this section of the voting. There'll be a short pause while we check the results. And I can confirm that you voted in favour of receiving the report of the accounts. Thank you. So moving on to the remuneration report presented by John Hawkins and Beverly Perkins. We'll open the poll now, and you should see the options for, against and abstain on your screen. Please select your choice, and remember again that you'll only be able to vote for 60 seconds, and members who are not eligible to vote will not be able to see the poll. Thank you for voting, and we'll just wait momentarily to get the results, and I can confirm that the remuneration report has been received. Thank you for your votes. So moving on now to a motion where you need to vote about directors' fees. As referenced within John's report, the board are recommending to members that the directors' fees for 2021 be increased by 2.4%, which is a sum of £211 per annum, to make the total directors' fees per annum £9,005, in line with the increase in the average weekly earnings index. We'll open the poll now. You should see the options for, against and abstain on your screen. Again, please select your option within 60 seconds, and we'll announce the results very shortly. Please remember that if you're not eligible to vote, you will not be able to. Thank you. The voting is now over, and I'm pleased to confirm that the members have voted in favour. Thank you. Right, moving on to the next motion. As Bev explained earlier, the board considered the need to be able to remunerate directors for activities undertaken on behalf of the society outside of core duties. Members are asked to approve the enabling provision that will enable the board to introduce such a scheme during 2021 financial year. Providing the motion is passed, we will come back next year to give details of how it worked. We'll open the poll now. You should see the options for, against, abstain on your screen. Please select your option and vote within 60 seconds. Again, members who are not eligible to vote will not see this screen. Thank you. The voting is now closed. And just a momentary wait. I'm pleased to say that motion has been carried. Thank you for your support. And we'll come back to you next year with more details. We now move on to the reappointment of the auditor. As Frank explained earlier, EY were appointed by the board following their tender in 2019. With the postponement of this AMM to this time, we therefore invite our members to ratify the appointment of EY during that year, ending the 25th of January 2020, and also to reappoint them for the coming financial year, ending 24th of January 2021. We'll take this as one motion, and we will open the poll now. You should see the options for, against, and abstain on your screen. Please select your option, and we'll announce the results shortly. Again, as before, the poll will only be open for 60 seconds, and members who are not eligible to vote will not see this screen. Thank you. Voting has now closed for that motion, and we have approval. So thank you. You've ratified EY's appointment for the last financial year and for their reappointment for the coming year. So the next motion is about the dividend, and members will be aware that the board made the decision in June to continue to distribute a dividend to our members totalling £2.1 million, despite the fact we weren't able to hold the annual members meeting and take a vote from the membership. Therefore, we now seek you to ratify the decision to distribute a dividend of £2.1 million, equivalent to 1.5% of qualifying spend paid on the value of members' qualifying purchases made from the Society during the year ending 25th of January 2020. So we're going to open the voting. And again, you'll see for, against, and abstain. And again, you have 60 seconds to vote. And again, only members who are eligible will be able to see this screen. Thank you. The voting is now closed. And that has been approved. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to the next motion then. This is where we ask the members to vote for the Society's continued affiliation to the Cooperative Party for the 12 months ending June 2021 at an annual subscription of £34,000. As a founder society of the Cooperative Party, we have paid an annual subscription for more than 100 years, part of our proud tradition of working to bring cooperative values into Parliament and our laws. Our society regularly meets with the Cooperative Party to ensure we get political and legal support for things like protecting retail workers from crime and passing legislation to protect our cooperative values. So I hope you can continue to support our tradition by supporting this motion. We'll open the poll now, and as before, there will be options for, against, abstain on the screen. Please select your option. You have 60 seconds to vote. And again, members who are not eligible to vote will not be able to see the poll. Thank you. Voting is now closed. We'll just wait momentarily for the results. And I'm pleased to say members have approved that motion. Thank you very much for that support. We're coming close to the end of the meeting. I'd like to introduce a video by Neil O'Keefe, our Joint Chief Executive. He's providing an update on the Society's Community Cares Fund and how we've been able to support many great causes during these challenging times.
Hi, I'm here at the Colchester Food Bank to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing to support our communities over the last few months. Let's go inside and take a look. As Roger mentioned earlier, we're living in extremely difficult times. Charities, community groups and individuals have really stepped up to support those who are vulnerable in our communities. We're proud to be at the heart of our communities and wanted to do as much as we can to help those who need it most. In April, our board agreed to set up the Community Cares Fund, diverting all available community funds to our supported areas of young people's mental health and well-being, food poverty, food waste and supporting our ageing population. Our initial pot of £230,000 was quickly added to by our generous members who have diverted over £139,000 of their dividends to the fund, giving us a total of nearly £370,000 to support our communities. Since our fund was launched, we've donated over £250,000 to local good causes. In the first wave of donations, we provided a total of £75,000 that was used to support Age UK across our region, 22 local food banks and community foundations in Essex, Suffolk and Norfolk. We also provided much needed emergency funding for Waveney Food Bank, who risked closure as their financial reserves were depleted. Working with our local community foundations, we provided £45,000 to support children and young people who have been affected by domestic violence, which has sadly increased over the recent months. I'd now like to hand over to Sally Winston, Chief Executive of the Lighthouse Women's Aid in Ipswich, to tell us all about how they have used their donation.
I just want to say a huge thank you to the East of England Co-op. Firstly, for the toddler playground in our refuge, which is now well established and greatly used by the littlest of our residents. I also want to thank you for the funding towards our Escape the Trap programme, which is a course specifically designed for teenage girls who are particularly at risk of abuse within their teenage relationships.
There are over 260,000 unpaid carers across our region, including 50,000 young carers. With a £57,000 donation, we're supporting 5 organisations in Essex, Suffolk and Norfolk to expand and adapt their services to provide much needed information, support and understanding to carers from as young as 4 years old. Here's Hayley Hancock, Head of Services at Suffolk Family Carers, to tell us how they will be using the Community Cares Fund that they have been awarded.
This funding from East of England Co-op will help adult carers get the benefits they're entitled to, and young carers as young as 4 build resilience and networks of support.
We also made a series of smaller but no less valuable donations to a variety of charities and good causes to support their work in the community during this difficult time. Like Colchester Food Bank, our region's food banks have been under enormous pressure as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. To ensure they had the stocks they needed over the busy summer holidays, we donated £22,500 to 24 local food banks and ran a 6-week donation drive across our stores. Thanks to our amazing colleagues, generous members and customers, we collected 4.7 tonnes of food items. That's an astonishing 3 tonnes more than the same time last year, and enough food to make over 2,000 meals. So Michael, can I ask you how the Holiday Hunger Campaign has helped you here at the Colchester Food Bank?
Well, it's helped us feed 50 extra families a week, more than we would normally do, and that has made a real difference to their lives, so thank you very much.
Making sure that everyone has access to the food they need has been an issue that has very much come to the fore over the last few months, not least with the campaign run by Manchester United and England footballer Marcus Rashford. In September, we were delighted to join forces with Marcus and sign up to the Child Food Poverty Task Force to support the call for the government to increase the value of Healthy Start vouchers from £3.10 to £4.25. We've lobbied our local MPs to call on the government to make that change, and until it happens, we're proud to fund the £1.15 difference ourselves. In November, we'll be bringing together representatives from charities, community groups and local authorities to discuss the issue of food poverty in our region and what can be done going forward to tackle this important issue. Our community engagement team have been out and about in our communities, safely supporting community groups with deliveries, litter picks and attending events such as the Aldborough Food and Drink Festival. We recognise the hard work of our region's teachers by delivering tea and biscuits to primary schools who stayed open for the children of key workers, and acknowledge the gratitude of parents who were homeschooling for the support schools have given them. We have been moved by the many people in our community who have rallied to support and do good amid the crisis. And during Co-op's fortnight, we thank 10 individuals who were nominated for being a community hero by our members and customers. Over the last few months, we've seen local charities and community groups adapting their services and creating new ways to support the people who need it most. We've also sadly seen some charities disappear. Our lives continue to be affected by the coronavirus. We don't know what the future holds. We do know this is a marathon and not a sprint. But with the support of our colleagues, members and customers, we will continue to care for our communities through this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. We're rightly proud of the support our family of businesses have given the region. This year has just been amazing, hasn't it? And the Community Care Fund is the icing on the cake. It's been an extra that we've been able to give. Well, this has been our first online annual members meeting, and I would especially like to thank my colleagues who did all the preparation beforehand to make this look so easy. Lynn Warner, Helen Raven, Laura Fellingham, Victoria Oldknow and Nikki Inslee. Thank you so much for all the work you've put in to creating this special event. Coming into this new live streaming world, it was very comforting to see that they'd done all the hard work that made it easy for me to sit here along with my colleagues answering your questions and dealing with the motions. Thanks also to our production team at GreenSpark. Sharon did ask a question online earlier, is this being recorded? And I can confirm that GreenSpark are recording it and it will be on the website in a few days. It's been a tremendous success with more votes cast than ever before for our directory elections, and attendance here tonight online. Very strange to only see a few colleagues around us, but we know there are hundreds of people watching. And thank you so much for engaging by voting and sending in your questions where possible. I've also got a few thanks to make. The particular thank you for Jonathan Carey, who was faced with the governance challenge of organising an online annual members meeting, literally within weeks of taking up his new post of becoming the Society Secretary. So well done, Jonathan. The board and the leadership team are very grateful to you for managing to do all that. During these last months, we've seen the tremendous strength of our leadership team. Incredible times, they've shown tremendous leadership, brilliant teamwork, and developing our vision for the future, which we'll tell you about next year. So thank you from the board to you, Nick Denny, Roger Grosvenor, Doug Field, and Neil O'Keefe. Well done, and a really big thank you from the entire board. Stay safe, everyone. Good night, and thank you for attending this first online annual members meeting.